2 years ago, we decided to start this crazy refit. We ripped everything out of our boat, the bulkheads, the wiring, the systems, everything down to bare fiberglass hull. From then, we just rebuilt everything. Part of the rebuild was also designing the most complete, the most refined, the ultimate all-electric sailboat system for our boat, but also as kind of like a way to showcase how you could do it on other boats too. The building phase is done. We just finished painting everything inside and out. And so now it's time to install systems, and we're starting with the heart of everything, the core of it all. It's going to be our batteries. Batteries are here.
Two main systems we need to install are plumbing and electrical, and we're starting with sort of like the tanks for each of those, as in we're starting with the water tanks for the plumbing side, we're starting with the battery bank for the electrical side, because they're like the biggest, bulkiest, most large wires, and then building those systems up to smaller and smaller components. And so we have multiple phases. These videos are going to be broken up over the next couple of months while we install everything. So we're also kind of needing to install plumbing and electrical at the same time, because, you know, where the big bilge pump hoses go and where the big battery cables go kind of need to go hand in hand. So the videos aren't really going to be like start to finish electrical and then start to finish plumbing. They're going to kind of happen at the same time, but we'll be sure to like split those up into separate playlists, so that, you know, you can, by the time we're done and we launch, there'll be like a playlist of this video all the way to like the electrical systems tour. And then there'll be one for plumbing probably as well, which will probably be a little bit shorter because it's less complicated.
Yeah, but I'm excited. I know you guys were really excited for this phase to start, and
I'm excited too.
Yeah.
This is the thing I've been looking forward to for 10 years, knowing someday we could like start from the ground up and build what we think is the best version of an all-electric system with the most redundancy and the most comprehensive design, and putting it all together and taking all the lessons we've learned and building it the most best way we possibly can. Yeah. So
I have all the notes so that we don't distract ourselves
too much. It's going to be really difficult to compartmentalize this into individual videos, I think. Like, this could be a 2-hour podcast on why we chose these batteries or this system or each individual component. We've been designing for a very long time and speaking with a lot of experts in the field to make sure that it's going to be amazing. But this video is going to be specifically about our batteries and sort of like why we chose them and the system we chose. And then in future videos, we'll get into all the other components so that we don't get too distracted in one video. We're going to try to keep this concise.
So we're going to have installing the ultimate electric system part 1 of 40.
Batteries. And then it'll be part 2 of 40.
Wiring.
EMS. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about what we had before
this
refit and why we decided to not put the same batteries in and why it didn't really work for our particular needs.
Yeah. What we had before was the same chemistry as what we're putting in, lithium iron phosphate, or LFP. It's a very stable chemistry. It is a little bit on the heavier side, but what we had before was designed to be like a drop-in replacement for a typical like Trojan T105 lead acid battery. And so what Battleborn did, which we think is really smart, was to make it's like the same form factor, it's similar in size, and it's all the components, all the BMS, all the management is built into it. It's a sealed waterproof package, and you can take your lead acid battery out and you can put one of those in, and you get, you know, more capacity, better charging, all the things you love about lithium. And you just need to change some settings on your charge controller, and you're good to go.
It's like a plug-and-play replacement.
Plug-and-play drop-in, and it works great. Like, if we were going to put one, we could, you know, it works great on a truck. It would work great if you're just replacing like a house bank on a regular boat. But the issues that we had is that it's really just not designed to build out as large of a system as we had. And it's also not really designed for like the granular monitoring and systems integration that we require. It was never designed to be the primary bank for an EV. And they told us that from the beginning, and we understood that, and we were willing to deal with the issues that would arise from that. But now that we can do it all from scratch and we can design everything from the ground up, we are going with a more comprehensive system where we can get like down to each individual cell monitoring. And it's also a smarter system so that the BMS can control like what's allowed to charge, what's allowed to discharge. It's just overall a much smarter, more comprehensive system. It's going to be more robust, and it's going to be more integrated in everything. So we're not going to run into failures like we did before.
Okay, so what we had before, there were 12 100 amp hour 12-volt batteries.
Yes.
3 banks with 4 batteries in each bank, but they
Yes.
were all in the same compartment.
Yes.
They were all...
Because there were 12-volt batteries, we needed to wire 4 of them in series to get 48 volts. And then each of those banks, we had 3 banks of 4 wired in parallel to bring up the amp hours, if that makes sense.
Not to me, but I'm sure.
Yeah. This
Probably
is kind of a complicated...
the more technical viewers here will understand.
So
they mentioned that the problem that we've had wasn't necessarily with the batteries themselves, but it was with the BMS, which is the battery management system.
yes.
Yeah. Do you want to kind of explain what the BMS is?
I'm not like any kind of battery expert, but in general, like the BMS, battery management system, is the thing that lithium batteries need in order for them to not catch on fire. It's kind of the most important part. It actually, I mean, it doesn't really matter what the battery chemistry is. As long as it's managed properly, you don't really have anything to worry about. So the BMS is really like the heart of the system. It controls everything. It's the main safety factor in the whole system. And so it's really important that it's robust and it's programmable and it's monitorable and it's integrated with the whole system.
So what was the issue with the batteries we had in the BMS?
The issues with the batteries we had is that the BMS was sealed inside of it, which works great for simplicity. But when the BMS detected some sort of fault, whether the battery was cold or too hot or a cell was too low or like whatever the issues are that a BMS would shut down a battery, it would just shut down. And we wouldn't have any warning. We wouldn't have any reason why. We'd just be motoring along and the whole boat would go dead.
Yeah.
Which when it's your only battery bank and it's your only source of power and the whole system goes flat, then we lose autopilot, we use chart plotter, we lose VHF radio, we lose depth, we lose motoring ability, lights, everything. It's just a completely dead, dark boat. So that happened 2 or 3 times to us over the course of 5 years, 6 years. And the other issue was because we didn't know what was happening, it was hard to troubleshoot it. We did know that the only way to fix it was to plug into shore power. And so the times that happened, it meant sailing all the way to a marina and then using the dinghy usually to push us in, plug into shore power so that the system could see that it was ready to charge. It would reset the BMS and then we'd charge back up again. It was a really weird issue. We didn't really talk about it too much because it was sort of one of the problems we were warned about by making those batteries work for our boat, if that makes sense. So like, it's not really a fault of the batteries. It's just we weren't using them for what they were made for. And so that was the issue we had, is that we just didn't know. There's no information coming out of the batteries because everything's sealed inside. So technology has changed a lot in the last 10 years. This time around, we're going with a more modular system. So there's going to be like batteries, an external BMS, external bus, external monitoring. All of it's going to talk to itself. All of it's going to send us warnings if things are out of whack before it starts to shut down. And the system's also designed to be able to shut things down systematically so that we don't go completely blackout. We're also having redundant battery banks. And this time around, rather than using DC to DC converters to get 12 volts from our 48 volt battery bank, we're actually having a 12 volt sort of like buffer battery in between the 48 volt bank and all of our 12 volt loads. So even if both systems go down, we're still going to be able to run our 12 volt systems, radio, chart plotter, VHF, lights. We'll still be able to run those systems for an extended period of time while we troubleshoot whatever happened that shut down both of our battery banks, which would be hopefully incredibly rare and probably happen never, but we're still building that buffer system in.
Yeah, and I know you guys are very excited to know what batteries we're going to use, so we're going to move from here because it's getting really hot and the sun is literally creeping itself. So let's go check out our batteries.
So in our opinion, it's vital when designing and building an all-electric system that the whole system is comprehensive and integrated and communicates with itself, and it's not just a bunch of random pieces patched together from the internet. And so when we were doing our research and deciding what system to go with, there were sort of three top choices we had. One was EP Technologies, the other one was MG Energy Systems, and Victron. So we looked at all of those systems, looked at all of the accessories they had, all of the components they had, and looked at how well they talked to each other and how their BMSs worked and how integrated they could work with the Ocean Volt system and the rest of the systems we had on the boat. And that's how we chose those top threes, because they all had really comprehensive systems. Then it came down to the actual batteries and where we thought the best batteries were and what made up a good battery. And also just what fit in the space in our boat. EP Technologies tends to make really big sort of commercial scale batteries that if we were designing and building a boat from the ground up, that might make sense because we could design the boat around the battery. But on our boat, we just didn't have space large enough to put their batteries. And so it really came down to MG and Victron. MG and Victron have quite similar components and actually integrate and work pretty well together. They both have chosen slightly different paths to go with their batteries and their management system. But in the end, after weighing all of the pros and cons and our needs, we ended up going with a complete Victron system. So the batteries we ended up going with are the NG 100 amp hour at 48 volt nominal. So it means we don't have to wire any of these in series. We can wire all of them in parallel. And we're going to be putting 10 batteries in total, which is going to give us roughly 50 kilowatt hours of total capacity. But we're splitting these 10 batteries up into two separate banks. One is going in the cockpit locker, and the other one is going underneath the companionway steps. So they're going to be split and divided by a watertight bulkhead, which is our first layer of redundancy. There's a few reasons why we ended up going with Victron. The first is they offer the most comprehensive package of blue boxes, as we call them. So they do the MPPTs, the AC charging, they do the bus bar system, they do the BMS, the batteries. We know it integrates well with Ocean Volt because we already had Victron components on board before. And so as kind of a one-stop shop to put together a comprehensive, complete package that we know is going to communicate and play well with itself. The second point is that their NG series of batteries, at least in our opinion, feels like it's sort of a generation past what the guys at MG are doing, just because this box is waterproof, which to us is very important. It's also plastic, which means nothing's going to corrode, and the form factor just fit better in our compartments. So we're actually able to install about 20% more power in the same footprint, but that's just because the shape of our boat. Third reason is the Victron Lynx bus bar system is genius in our opinion. You get to string together a very modular system that includes the BMS and the power in and distribution and fuses, and it's all networked together. And it makes the installation of all of this really easy because you can kind of just piece together the components you need, bolt it all together, and it's super easy that it's all integrated and bolts well together. There are plenty of manufacturers out there that offer some of these features, but not all of them packaged into like one system. So that's why we ended up choosing to go with a complete Victron system. So these NG batteries are the most recent generation that Victron offers. They have no, I would say, management inside. They have small circuit boards that monitor the cell voltage and temperature and then send that out through their BMS. But they make multiple sizes and capacities of these batteries, so you can build out whichever bank you need, 12, 24, and 48. Airplane. There are many ways to get to a 48 volt battery bank. The reason our boat is running at 48 volts is because that's what the Ocean Volt motors need. And so we decided to go with batteries that are 48 volts from the factory, which means we don't have to wire any of them in series to bring up the voltage. We can just wire all of them in parallel. So the second layer of redundancy that we have is that one of these batteries could power our boat, and we have 10. So theoretically, one could get damaged, one could have a bad cell. There's multiple reasons a battery could theoretically stop working. They're very rare, but if you have a bank of 5 of these batteries and 1 or 2 of them for some reason gets damaged or the fuse gets blown or whatever, the other ones can still run all of our systems. So it's sort of our second level of redundancy. However, by having these battery banks the size that they are, 5 batteries in parallel, and the fact that they're all 48 volts, we've run into a bit of a design issue, and we're going to have to come up with some sort of creative solution to solve it, which I'll explain next. These batteries are great. Their form factor is great. They're easy to install. They come with their own mounting bracket, which is genius. But in our particular case, because we're running 48 volt batteries, the pro is we can basically run the whole boat off of 1 battery if we actually needed to for some crazy reason. But the con, therefore, is that each battery needs its own fuse. And the issue is that there's no really good sort of off-the-shelf solution for what we need. Because these are lithium batteries, the fuses need to have incredibly high interrupting currents, and there's only 1 fuse that really does that well for the marine industry, and that's a Class T fuse, which is kind of a big chunky thing. We wish we could use terminal fuses, which just bolt directly on the terminal, and then you connect your positive lead to that, but they don't have a high enough interrupting capacity, and they're meant really for like lead acid batteries, so we can't actually use them on lithium. What we had before was our batteries all wired in series and parallel, and so the whole bank just had 1 fuse. But because these are higher capacity, higher voltage, higher everything, their ability to like dump a whole lot of current all at once in a fault is a lot higher. And so we need to fuse each individual battery. The ABYC standard suggests that the fuse is within 7 inches of the positive terminal. Ideally, it'd be even shorter because anything downstream of the fuse is protected, but anything upstream isn't. And so ideally, the fuse would really be connected directly to the positive terminal. So we're going to need to get a fuse holder and put it somewhere close by. What we had before was this. This is a marine grade Class T fuse holder. That's a Class T fuse. This one is 400 amps, and it's what we used to run our whole boat off of. We don't need a full 400 amp fuse on each one of these batteries. We could probably get away with like a 100 or 150, but the fuse holder is the same size, and it's kind of a big chunky thing. But this is a certified fuse holder, so we can't just like 3D print our own holder in a clever, smaller way. Because there's no way we'd ever get insurance, and that's just kind of a bad idea because this is rated for heat and it's gone through a lot of testing. But what we can do is create some sort of bracket or mount or something to get these fuses as close to the positive terminal as we can, somewhere around here, and then get some sort of bus bar or a connector to get the positive over, and then we can run the positive cable off of the other side. The other design requirement is that since we have 2 identical matching battery banks and they're all running off of the single bus bar, the battery banks need to be symmetrical so that the resistance, the loop resistance from the positive through the fuse, through the bus bar, up to the links distributor, out to whatever it needs to go to after, but then back on the negative is all the same for both battery banks. So the resistance needs to be the same so that both battery banks get the same level of charging. So we need to come up with a solution for the cockpit battery box and the battery box that's going in the companionway so that we can build them in the same way with the same components and the same resistance and the same cable runs so that everything is the same. So that's the tricky requirement that we now face. And it's going to require quite a few prototypes and a lot of head scratching and a lot of thinking and figuring it out because we want it to be clean. We want it to be easy to maintain, easy to install, and easy to access. And it needs to be symmetrical. So yeah, we've got a lot of design work to do to figure out the best solution for that. But I've probably rambled on enough for one video. So we'll work on that. And we'll see you guys next week with whatever solution we've come up with and installing the actual batteries. So yeah, we'll see you next week. Cheers.